Ever since I can remember, I was infatuated with the Trojan War. When I was little, my parents bought a DVD player and we had a bought DVD of Troy 2004 with Brad Pitt. I probably watched that movie like 100 times, and I kid you not, there was a moment where for like an entire month I watched the film every single day at least once. Now my little child brain had no idea what was happening with the story, and all I knew was Helen runs away with Paris and the Greeks go to war. I watched it mainly for the big battle segments and the army clashes, but since then I always felt closeness to this historical event that may have not happened at all. No one knows really. So safe to say, the movie I so much love to rewatch now and again is not the best retelling of the story, as you can't fit everything into 2 hours and 40 minutes. While doing research, I found out that Homer is displayed as the official writer of this movie in IMDb. Well, right? But with the upcoming Odyssey movie just around the corner, I thought I would help to generate at least some hype for it and maybe also give some context on the real historic events of the Trojan War. Dive into meat and tail and see how much more crazy it was than depicted on screens. Telling the full story of the Trojan War is harder than most people expect, because no single ancient work gives us the entire thing from beginning to end. Homer gives us the most famous parts of the story, but not the whole war. The Iliad focuses on one short stretch late in the conflict, centered mostly around Achilles, his rage, and the death of Hector. To understand the wider story, we have to look beyond Homer. Much of the story once belonged to a larger body of poems known as the Trojan cycle. Most of these epics has been lost, but their stories survive through later retellings preserved in key episodes. There are also many alternate versions and details that I will probably only skim through in this video. So if you want the full Trojan War, you have to piece it together. It's more like a puzzle than a concrete story that you start reading and end. From the very beginning, the war is not just told as a human conflict. In later tradition, its roots lie among the gods. Zeus and Themis are said to have set the war in motion, and the first spark comes at the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, the future parents of Achilles. There, Eris, the goddess of strife, throws down a golden apple inscribed to the fairest and ignites a quarrel between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite over who deserves it. Why does she throw the apple, you ask? Well, because she was salty she wasn't invited to the wedding. Zeus refuses to judge between them, so Hermes leads the three goddesses to Paris on Mount Ida and makes him decide. Each offers him a reward. Hera promises power, Athena offers wisdom and victory in war, and Aphrodite offers him Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chooses Aphrodite, and with that choice the path to war is already set. From there the quarrel among the gods spills into the world of men. Paris travels to Sparta as guest and is welcomed by Menelaus, Helen's husband. Menelaus leaves for Crete. Paris and Helen live together, taking treasures with them. In some versions, Aphrodite herself brings them together, making Helen's departure a direct fulfillment of the promise she made on Mount Ida. Even here though, the story is not completely fixed. Some ancient accounts make Helen's departure sound more like an affair, and others state that she was kidnapped. But the clearest and usually the main version of the story is that Paris and Helen fall into an affair and flee together to Troy. Before Helen ever married, her many suitors were made to swear an oath. Her father Tyndareus forced them out to promise that if anything ever happened to Helen's marriage, they would stand by and defend the man she chose. So when Helen became the wife of Menelaus, that oath created something much bigger than a private marriage dispute. The moment Paris took her away, the insult no longer belonged to one household. It became a matter of honor, bringing kings from all across Greece. Menelaus went to his brother Agamemnon at Mycena and called for an expedition. Heralds were sent out across the Greek world, summoning the rulers who had once sworn for Helen's sake. And that is how the war truly begins. The old stories linger on several episodes from this gathering, and some of them become famous famous in their own right, like for example Odysseus, not wanting to leave his home and family behind, tried to avoid the expedition by pretending to be mad, but Palamedes saw through him. To expose the act, he put Odysseus' infant son Telemachus in danger, forcing Odysseus to reveal himself. The trick failed and Odysseus too was dragged into the war. Once all the kings had gathered, the fleet assembled at Aulis. There the Greeks made sacrifices and the seer Calchas interpreted the famous omen of the snake and the sparrows, a sign that the war ahead would be long, costly and guided as much by prophecy as by men. Even the first attempt to sail to Troy went wrong. The Greeks landed at Teutrania by mistake, thinking they had reached their true destination. There they fought Telepus, who killed one of the Greek leaders before Achilles wounded him, but the war had already begun to show its strange logic. Later, an oracle revealed that the same Telepus was needed to guide the Greeks to Troy. He came to Argos and Achilles healed the very wound he had given him. Only then could the expedition finally be set on the right path. Then we have the stories about Achilles. Long before any of this, Achilles himself had already been marked by fate. His mother Thetis tried to shield him from death by dipping him in the river Styx when he was an infant, leaving only his heel vulnerable. Years later, when prophecy said he was doomed if he went to Troy, she tried once again to cheat fate by hiding him in Skyros, disguised as a girl, but destiny caught up with him there too. On Skyros, he fathered a son, Neoptolemus, later called Pyrrhus, who would one day become crucial to the final destruction of Troy. On the way to the war, the Greeks also lost one of their own in a very different way. Philoctetes, the great archer who carried the bow of Heracles, was bitten by a snake. His wound festered so badly and smelled so horribly that the army abandoned him on the island of Lemnos. It seemed like just another side tragedy on the road to Troy. Much later, the Greeks would learn they could not take the city without him. What follows is the long middle of the war, the part people usually imagine when they think of the Trojan War as a whole. Yet ironically, this is the stretch least fully covered in the Iliad and in any other cycles. Before open fighting, the Greeks made one final attempt at diplomacy. Envoys were sent to demand Helen and the stolen treasures back. The Trojans refused, so the Greeks landed in force. The first man ashore was Protesilaus, and he was killed almost immediately by Hector, the eldest son of King Priam, the prince of Troy. And so a grinding battle began, but soon after Achilles joined the fight and drove the Trojans back, and the war settled into a long grinding siege that would last for years. But this was never just a matter of standing outside the walls and waiting. The wider tradition describes the war as a brutal cycle of raids, devastation, and pressure on the whole surrounding region. The Greeks attacked allied towns, sacked nearby cities, seized livestock, and took captives. The war spread far beyond Troy itself, slowly crushing the land that fed and supported it. Several famous episodes belong to this part of the story, even though people often assume they come straight from Homer. Achilles is said to have wanted to see Helen, and in some traditions, Aphrodite and Thetis arrange a meeting between them. At another point, when the Greeks grew tired and wanted to go home, Achilles helped keep the expedition together. He raided the herds of Aeneas, sacked Limessus and other nearby places. All of this matters because by the time the Iliad begins, Achilles is already not just another great warrior, he is the most feared and decisive weapon the Greeks have. The part of the war best known today is the one told by Homer in the Iliad. The Iliad begins late in the war. After years of fighting have already passed, during the raid, two women are captured. Achilles takes Briseis as his prize, while Agamemnon takes Chryseis. Those two women become the immediate cause of a quarrel that tears the Greek camp apart. Chryses, a priest of Apollo, comes to the Greek camp to ransom his daughter Chryseis. Agamemnon refuses him at first, but Apollo feels insulted, and so he answers the insult by spreading a plague throughout the Greek army. Achilles calls an assembly and Agamemnon is finally forced to give Briseis back, but he takes Briseis from Achilles instead. That single act blows the Greek war effort apart. Achilles, humiliated and furious, withdraws from battle and asks his mother Thetis to beg Zeus for one thing: let the Trojans drive the Greeks to the edge so the army understands exactly how much it needs him, and that is exactly what happens. Without Achilles, the Greeks begin to collapse on the front lines. The Trojans press harder and harder, even driving them back towards their ships. Only when the danger becomes unbearable and Agamemnon actually returns Briseis to Achilles and assures him he never slept with her, does Achilles give ground. Though still not enough to return himself, he allows Patroclus, his best friend, to enter battle wearing his armor, so the Trojans will think Achilles has returned. He gives Patroclus a clear warning: drive them away from the ships, but don't push too far. But once the battle takes hold, limits begin to break. Patroclus presses forward beyond what Achilles intended, and in the chaos of battle he is struck down by Hector, and with that the entire emotional center of the story changes. Achilles' quarrel with Agamemnon suddenly becomes almost irrelevant. Achilles returns to the battlefield transformed by grief and rage. He's no longer fighting for honor, but for vengeance. He drives the Trojans all the way back to their gates, and there, outside the walls of Troy, the war reaches one of its greatest climaxes. Everyone who can flee into the city does so, but only one remains: Hector, the heir of the city. Priam begs his son to come back within the walls because he knows what's coming. Achilles is no longer advancing like a man, he is coming like death itself. Hector tries to stand his ground, but when Achilles closes in, his nerve breaks and he runs. 3 times Achilles chases him around the walls of Troy, while the whole city watches, and the gods watch from above. Zeus wants to save Hector, but when both warriors' fates are placed on a scale, Hector's fate sinks down. Apollo abandons him, and Athena takes the final step by tricking Hector into stopping and turning to fight, disguised herself as his brother Deipobus. Hector thinks he is no longer alone. Now at last, he stands and faces Achilles. Before they fight, Hector asks for one final pact. Whoever wins should return the other man's body to his family. Achilles refuses. There will be no mercy here, no honor between them, only revenge. Hector attacks first, but the fight is already decided because he is wearing Achilles' own old armor, stripped from the corpse of Patroclus, and Achilles knows exactly where the weakness is. He strikes Hector in the throat, and Troy's greatest defender falls. But Achilles is still not satisfied. Maddened by grief, he ties Hector's body behind his chariot and drags it before the eyes of the Trojans. The gods intervene to stop the continued dishonoring of Hector's body. Soon after, Priam, Hector's father, comes secretly into the Greek camp to beg Achilles for the return of his son. It's one of the most powerful scenes in all of ancient literature. The old king, who has lost almost everything, kneeling before the man who killed his son, and the killer himself suddenly forced to remember what it means to be a human. For a brief moment, grief unites them more deeply than war divides them. Achilles returns Hector's body, and the Iliad ends not with the fall of Troy, but with Hector's funeral. After the Iliad and Hector's burial, the war enters its endgame. New allies come to Troy. Achilles kills Penthesilea, queen of the Amazons and daughter of Ares, the god of war. He also kills Memnon, son of Eos, who arrives in armor forged by Hephaestus. But Achilles' own fate is now close. As he leads the attack towards the Trojan walls, Paris shoots an arrow guided by Apollo and hits him in the heel, his only weak spot. Achilles dies in front of the gates of Troy. Right after that, a struggle breaks out over his body. Ajax carries the corpse back towards the ships while Odysseus holds off the attackers. Funeral games are held, and then comes the bitter contest for Achilles' armor. In the surviving tradition, the arms are awarded to Odysseus, with Athena often standing behind the choice. Ajax cannot bear it. Driven mad by humiliation, he slaughters livestock in the delusion that he is killing his enemies. When clarity returns, he realizes what he has done and kills himself. Odysseus captures Helenus, a Trojan seer, and from him the Greeks learn what is still needed to take the city. One of those necessities necessities is the return of Philoctetes from Lemnos. He is brought back, healed and restored to battle. The most common version of the story is that it's Philoctetes who finally kills Paris. After Paris dies, Helen is married to his brother Deiphobus. Now the last pieces begin to fall into place. Achilles' son Neoptolemus is brought from Skyros to join the war, fulfilling another condition of Troy's fall. Under Athena's guidance, a massive wooden horse is built. The Greeks choose their best warriors and hide them inside. Odysseus and Diomedes also steal the Palladium, the sacred image of Athena on which Troy's protection is believed to depend. Then the rest of the Greek army burns the camp and sails away to the nearby island of Tenedos, creating the illusion that the war is over and the invaders have gone home. Inside Troy, the horse becomes the final fatal mistake. The Trojans argue over what to do with it. Some want to destroy it immediately, others believe it should be brought in the city and dedicated to Athena. Then comes the terrible omens. Glaucon, who warns the Trojans against the horse, is attacked by serpents along with one of his sons. To many inside the city, that looks like divine punishment for doubting the offering. I just want to add a small comment here that as much as the Trojans worshipped Athena, she was really the mastermind of their downfall and was trying to obliterate them from the very beginning. So the horse is brought inside the walls. That night Sinon gives the signal. The Greek fleet returns from Tenedos. The warriors hidden in the horse emerge and open the city from within, and Troy is finally taken. Neoptolemus kills King Priam at the altar of Zeus. Menelaus kills Deiphobus and takes Helen back to the ships. Ajax the Lesser drags Cassandra from the image of Athena, committing an outrage so severe that it angers both gods and Greeks alike. Fire spreads through the city, and Troy, after 10 years of war, finally burns. And even then the horror is not over. Astyanax, the young son of Hector and Andromache, is killed so that no heir of Troy will ever grow up to avenge the city. Andromache is taken by Neoptolemus as part of the spoils of war. The surviving women, treasures and prisoners are divided, and at that point in the mythic sense, the Trojan War is over. The city has fallen, its greatest defenders are dead, its royal house is broken, and most of the conquerors, despite having won at last, are already on the road to tragedy of their own. Many of the heroes that survived the war will never reach back home, and many of those who will reach home will meet an unfortunate end soon after. Many except a few. And one of them is Odysseus. But to learn what happens with him after the war, we need to watch the new movie, which may or may not suck. We'll see. If you liked this video and like this form of content, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. And for now, ciao.